The Chevrolet Malibu is one of America's oldest nameplates. The car first debuted in 1963, but not as a model in its own right. It was actually a version of the Chevelle, and Malibu was essentially a trim level. That was the case for about 10 years. And then the Malibu nameplate disappeared until 1978, when it reappeared as a model in its own right. Essentially sort of shared the same platform as the Buick Regal and a couple of others. That lasted until about 1983, and then the nameplate was thought to have disappeared completely until it was resurrected again in 1997, this time as a Wayne Cherry styled, fairly generic four-door sedan. Previously there'd been wagons and coupes. Again, it's sort of shared the same platform as the Pontiac Grand Am and the Oldsmobile Aurora. I have to say, it was a very boring looking car, that was. So, you know, Wayne Cherry, an accomplished designer, obviously having an off day. It was then replaced in 2004 by an Epsilon platform model. And I felt that that was much more up to date, much better looking. It looked not too dissimilar to the Opel Vectra, which shared its basis. That car was replaced by a bigger car in 2008, using the same platform, but arguably more handsome. And then again, it was replaced in 2013 or so by an Epsilon 2 based car. When the Epsilon 2 was replaced by the E2XX platform in 2015 for the 2016 model year, this came along. This is the 9th generation Malibu, and it was the first Malibu not to even offer a V6. They were all fours, mainly turbos, and that marked a radical departure for Malibu nameplate in the United States. It was also filled with tech. It came with, well, as an option at least, GM's goodies like blind spot alerts and adaptive cruise, all that sort of stuff. It also used their teenage driver function, and what that did was it allowed parents to monitor the car if their teenage kids were in it, and it would monitor their driving styles. So yeah, Big Brother was on its way. I'm Darren Walker, and this is Auto Atlantica. So this 9th generation car debuted for 2016, and it came with a variety of trim levels, a base L, an LS, an LT, and that's what this is, and then a range top in Premier. Premier had replaced basically the LTZ throughout Chevrolet's range. Now, as far as engines were concerned, it initially was offered with 3 different units. There was the LFY 2-litre turbo developing 250 horsepower, one of my favourite GM modern engines. That was accompanied by 163 bhp 1.5 litre turbo as well. That's what's in this car. And then there was also a curious 1.8 litre hybrid. That was a mild hybrid. It used the Voltec technology, but in the Malibu application, it just had a very small 80 cell 1.5 kilowatt hour battery that was helping to drive the front wheels. The car develops about 180 horsepower in total, but it was expensive and it didn't sell, so it was withdrawn after just 2 years. In 2019, the whole car received a facelift, and there were some interior improvements, but mainly it was to the outside. The car gained rather nice LED taillights, and at the front, I think these headlights are LEDs, and but the whole car gained a new front end with a much wider grille. I actually preferred the smaller grilled version on the 9th generation car, but this is still a handsome car. It's on the E2XX platform, so basically it shares its underpinnings with the very last generation Opel Vauxhall Insignia in Europe, which was sold here as a Buick Regal, of course. But this was a much better value than the Regal. At the time of the facelift, the hybrid was actually replaced by a 1.6 litre direct injection diesel. It had been used in the Cruze without much success, and also the GMC Terrain and Chevy Equinox twins too, again without success, and likewise in this car without success as well. So it was dropped after a couple of years. The 2 litre was dropped in for the 2022 model year, leaving solely the 1.5. The trunk is remote accessible. Let's take a look in there, and it's a decent size. They're the actual original carpets that have never been used, because this car has an optional rubber mat kit that was fitted by the dealer. Now, being of an era from the mid 2010s, everything in this car is generic GM switchgear, the whole kit and caboodle. And that's no bad thing, because it's very functional. Standard window switches and mirror switches, standard GM door handle there, along with the central locking. The mirrors are nice. They are stylish, but they offer a wide field of view. The whole dashboard is very attractive. The plastics aren't really hard and scratchy, but there's a nice sort of soft feel that goes around the centerpiece of the dashboard, and it extends onto the passenger side as well. And I really like these chrome lipped vents. Again, that sort of styling extends around, and you've got a similar styling with this two-tone feature on the doors as well. And then the seats are of the same kind of trim. These are actually leather seats, and they're an option. In that option pack, you have a leather topped shifter, also this leather wrapped steering wheel, which is heated too. The other option pack that this car has is all the radar sensors I was referring to earlier. So like parking sensors, it's got a pedestrian brake alert, it's got a rear cross alert, it's got the lane change alert as well, as you can see on the mirror there, and also adaptive cruise, so you can follow at a particular distance from the car in front. The steering wheel itself feels great. It's just a nice size. It feels very sporty. You've got a real commanding view of these instruments, which again are sort of generic GM. And the center console is very, very sort of basic, really. You've got a sort of pad there for, you can put wallets and things like that in, and you can hold a phone there. Presumably some models had this as a phone charger. They were starting to come in then. And they were all models had this 9-speed automatic. And the climate control switches, again, you can turn these to change the temperature, and it's dual zone, which is nice. These are the old school GM switches. They're nice and tactile. I really like them. And you can operate this touchscreen either as a touchscreen or via these buttons. So you've got this home button, volume button there as well. And you can, it's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. This is the IntelliLink system that GM used after 2019. And that's why it's got these more updated graphics on. Now, the one thing I don't like about this screen, it's exactly the same as what was in the Equinox. There is no cowling to cover this, and it tilts upwards towards the roof. So and because it's a glass effect, unlike some of GM's other models at the time, the reflections are awful. And in bright sunlight, as you can see, you can barely see it. And when you've got this panoramic roof open, which again is another option on this car, you just can barely see it at all. In the back, you have a ton of rear foot room and knee room in this thing. Um, that was one of the virtues of the E2XX platform. It offered rear passengers a humongous amount of room. Being front wheel drive, you are not hampered either by a transmission tunnel. Despite the shape of the car having that teardrop shape, there is a lot of headroom in the back here, and these headrests in the back are just the nice size for both comfort and rear visibility. This is that rubber mat package, which has these deep sides, so you can really clean them out easy. Up front, you've on the dashboard, this is a very generic dashboard with a tachometer one side, a speedometer the other, and then a fuel gauge and temperature gauge up top, and likewise the monochrome display in the middle. Well, this one's sort of set on the speed, but you can change it for average fuel economy. The fuel range, we've got about 68 miles left, so we're not going to drive too far. And the average speed, timer, etc, etc. Let's see what else we've got under vehicle. You've got remaining oil life, air filter life, oil pressure, tyre pressures, all the standard. There's the following distance for the adaptive cruise, battery voltage, coolant temperature, and there's the change the units and the speed warning. You can have that on and off. And then on eco mode, it tells you can keep this on this setting, which tells you what your current and average fuel economy, and even gives you an eco index as well. So if you are a good boy driving, then it will tell you. A couple of other things about this particular Malibu. This one does have an electrochromic rear view mirror, but there's no electrochromic feature on either of the outside mirrors, which is a shame. That is an option. It's got standard OnStar up top, as you'd expect on a modern GM vehicle. And this seat is power adjusted. So let's go for a drive and see what this thing is like. The driving position in this car is really lovely. And you do get the impression that you are in a much larger car than you actually are. You know, in this world of crossovers, after you've been driving them for a while, it's a real nice refreshing change to get back into a sedan, and it feels low slung and it feels sporty as well. Yeah, this 1.5, it's not bad. So it develops 163 horsepower, but again, as with the Terrain, I do feel that it's not the best match for this gearbox. It does feel like it's hunting a little bit, holding in a lower gear, waiting to sort of step up. But once you get up to speed, actually, this, like the Terrain, this feels pretty good. It feels like a nice sort of cruising car. I would have no problems whatsoever taking this car across a multi-state trip, for instance. This windshield is really deep. You got a good view of the bonnet as well. The visibility out back, considering its coupe-like profile, is really nice. And the side windows aren't bad. It's hampered a bit by this high belt line, window line, but it really isn't that bad. It doesn't feel slow by any standards. We're doing about 65 now, and this is very typical of the kind of cruising speed that most people would do, between this and 75 miles per hour. And I don't really like to speed on this road because cops are generally out in force, but yeah, you can get up to 70 very, very quickly indeed, and effortlessly too. Once you open this sunroof up, and this is a $1,100 option on this car, but the feeling of airiness is fantastic. You just have to be aware of where the sun is, because if it is behind you, the reflections on this screen, if you are using this for navigation, for instance, are pretty horrible. So this E2XX platform was essentially the final iteration of the Epsilon series, and it is absolutely beautiful. It offers a fantastic ride, and the handling is just second to none. Considering the size of this platform, I'll have to check, but I'm pretty sure this is the same platform that underpinned the Cadillac XT4. It's got a typical sedan feel, but at the end of the day, it's just a real motorway mile muncher as well. Despite the relatively modest cylinder capacity that this car's got, the turbo definitely helps. I'm going to close that sunroof because you could grow tomatoes in this car if you left that open for too long. Now, as I said, this particular one is a 2021 model. By that time, the 1.5 was the only engine option available. The following year, they got rid of the L model and the Premier as well, and so the LT was given a few extra toys from the Premier, but the rest was basically an option. This particular package, with the options that it's got on it, is not far from the Premier spec at all. So would I buy this car? If I was in the market for a mid-size sedan, yes, I would. I would probably use a car like this purely for commuting. When I do have to work away on business, it's normally to the other side of Ohio, and this would be an ideal chariot to do just that. It's very economical. You easily get low 30s mpg on average in this thing, and on a steady motorway run, probably as much as 36 or 37, I would think. At least I would hope. So yeah, it would make for very economical. With gas prices a little bit elevated right now, it would certainly be a wiser choice than my truck, and it's just as comfortable. It's very comfortable indeed. When the Malibu disappears in November 2024, it will join Ford in the United States in not offering a single sedan or a traditional 3-box sedan. I think that's a shame because I really miss them, and certainly miss the days when they ruled the roost. Same with wagons. But when wagons disappeared in favour of minivans, who'd have thought the sedan would follow suit? In the United States, at least, that only leaves the likes of Subaru, Kia, Honda and Hyundai as offering any sedans whatsoever. And I think that is GM's loss. You know, they're following the money at the end of the day. They're following the market. And this car is just as good as any Honda. It's just as good as any Hyundai. So that brand perception that has long been held against General Motors is been proven a misnomer for an awful long time. I'm Darren, and this is Auto Atlantica.